Our scripture reading for today comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Hello, my name is Derek Peterson, and I've spent the past 40 years studying, researching, teaching, and coaching people about resilience. And while I understand that we're each resilient in our own way, I've found that we all grow our resilience by connecting with others. And the foundations of resilience are laid long before any moment of adversity occurs. As a young man, I began wondering, why do some people seem to be stronger and to bounce back from their disappointments, failures, and adversities, while others are less likely to do so? I explored these questions in college and again in grad school, and I learned how others faced challenges, from the young men at the Red Wing Juvenile Correctional Facility, from American Indian youth and elders in the desert Southwest, and from college students in Minnesota, Arizona, and Alaska. And I began to see some common threads. It was in Alaska, my home for over 20 years, where I was given the opportunity to dig deep into the question. In 1995, after returning from a 2-year bicycling sabbatical, I learned about the research that developmental psychologist Emmy Werner did with children on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. For over 40 years, she tracked 698 young people. She tracked and measured their journey through the mundane and the traumatic cultural shifts taking place on the island. Through her research, she identified conditions and attributes that buffered the impact of difficult events. She called these protective factors. And it turns out that they are what we need to bounce and bounce again. We think of protective factors as the strings that are woven together to form the blanket for the blanket toss that Laura talked about in the children's message. Other researchers have long since confirmed Werner's findings, and we now count over 100 protective factors that we understand to have this kind of power. In my 30s and 40s, my job was to identify and grow these protective factors for youth across Alaska, from throughout Anchorage and into over 160 rural Alaskan villages. Now, we expected to find that if communities worked together to grow these protective factors, that their kids would succeed. And through many miles, potlatches, potlucks, conversations with elders from many cultural groups, I discovered something really, really important. That even if the protective factors were present in a community, it didn't mean that each young person had them. Nor did it mean that each young person had equal access to them. Young people didn't automatically pick up the protective value of these factors, even as the community was working hard to give them to all the kids. This was a huge epiphany, and I began to see that the way we acquire the protective value of these factors is by catching them from people who play unique and important roles in our lives. It turns out that we weave our own blankets through connection. To understand this better, let's start with some remembering. Like you, I've needed to be resilient in my past 60 years. For instance, once, as a 7-year-old boy on a fishing trip, the boat I was in with my dad capsized and threw us into the icy water. I remember when my dad grabbed me by my life preserver and looked me in the eye and told me, "Trust me." I remember the fear of screaming alongside him for help as we shivered uncontrollably in the water, really wondering if anyone would ever save us. We were rescued, and after hospitalizations, we recovered to fish again. I trusted my dad, and I caught the protective factors of courage and grit and hope and asking for help. Those are some of the same things I relied upon 20 years later on a long rock climbing fall that I was lucky to survive. Or 40 years later when a friend and I were caught for 2 days, under-resourced in a freak summer blizzard on the side of a volcano in northern Oregon. Like many of you, I've also lived through the devastation of loss, whether it was a loss of a cherished family member, to suicide, the shock of my cancer diagnosis, or the feeling of being destroyed after the loss of my first marriage. When I've experienced these losses, including my divorce, I resisted the urge to isolate myself. Instead, I reached out to people whom I was deeply connected to. Some listened in a way that could hold my pain, and some made me laugh. And some prompted me to think about the story my future self might tell one day. And some, like my Russian Orthodox friend Father Michael, reminded me that the next love that would come into my life might just like those special things about me that my fading love was done with. And I'm glad I listened. Like you, I have bounced into, through, and beyond these stories in my life. And as I reflect on how, I can see that very special people were providing me with the strings to weave my own blanket, and that they took turns holding their part of the blanket tight to catch and launch me again. In our work, we now call these people anchors. I know that you have these people in your life as well. If you're watching today, you've made it through some hard times too. And others were able to provide you with the tangible and intangible supports you needed to make it this far. You've had people holding your blanket too. So who are the anchors and how do you find them? Maybe you have an anchor or two from your family of origin, whether they be biological, adoptive, or foster, or a spouse or partner in your current family. Maybe they're a colleague. Maybe they're a member of the congregation. Maybe you have an anchor that's passed away, but the memory of their love, presence, and lessons still impact you today. Maybe someone you've met recently makes you feel better after talking with them. An anchor can sometimes be someone you don't know well, but you admire from a distance. The role or title doesn't quite matter. It's the character or the nature of the relationship. Someone who, whether for a moment or a lifetime, you resonate with enough to catch what you need from them. For young people, anchors are people that see you and how you are special and unique in all the world. Or they may be someone who sees what you can do, what you're capable of, and has high expectations for you, and can mentor, support, or coach you into those expectations. They can help you get there. As adults, anchors are people who see what's right and strong about us. They make us feel valued, and they model traits that we wish to amplify in ourselves. We trust their competence, we value their goodness, and we see their genuineness. Most of us have at least one of these connections. One anchor is great, and there is power, great, great power in having 5 or more. Today, I want to invite you to grow your resilience in 3 specific ways. First, remember your anchors. Think about who some of your anchors have been in your life. Remember what it is that they've given you and what you've caught from them that has fed your strength and fed your resilience. 2, connect and reconnect with them. That could be a phone call, that could be a socially distant walk, a letter, or an online meeting. If they've passed away or you don't know how to reach them, write a letter or say a prayer. However it is that you connect, be as specific as you can about what you learned from them or what you're grateful they shared with you. It might sound something like, "Thank you for modeling integrity and empathy." And, "Thank you for reminding me of the value of my school or my church community." 3, add more people. One of the key things we can do to strengthen our resilience is to add more anchors. Think about that blanket toss. It's ideal to recruit the folks that hold up the blanket before your first flight. But even as some may come and go, it's never too late to add more people. A simple way you can start that process in our central community is by joining the Connection Circle, hosted by the deacons every Thursday night. Now, at some point, you may be on the receiving end of an expression of gratitude like I'm talking about. If this happens, your job is to say, "You're welcome." Please, please don't brush it aside. That gratitude is actually someone inviting you to hold a portion of their blanket, or what we now call a web of support. When you receive it with grace, it tells them you see and hear them and strengthens the connection. Years ago, the anthropologist Margaret Mead was asked by a student in her class, "Doctor, what was the first sign of civilization in a culture?" And one might speculate that Dr. Mead would have said agriculture, the domestication of herd animals, or the building of walls and roofs. Instead, Dr. Mead said that the first sign of civilization was a 15,000-year-old broken leg bone that was healed. She explained that in the animal kingdom, when an animal breaks its leg, it dies. It can't run from danger, it can't get to the river for a drink, nor hunt for food. It becomes part of the food chain. No animal survives a broken leg long enough for the bone to heal. But among us humans, a broken leg that heals is evidence that another human took the time to stay with the one who was hurt. We can speculate that the other human nurtured the wound, perhaps carried the person to safety and tended the wounded with food, water, shelter, warmth, and friendship until the leg was healed. Helping someone else through a tough time is precisely where civilization starts. Civilization is living within the shelter of one another. Our spiritual ancestors suggested as much in our scripture reading for today. As the scripture in Ecclesiastes pointed out, two are better than one, because when one falls down, the other can help them up. I suspect most of us are good at being the helper and attending to others. Are we as good at receiving support? Do we understand that we can grow resilience in ourselves and others with both sides of this exchange? It's time that we remember that we live in the shelter of one another, that we remember or reweave our blankets by attending to these connections with others, especially our anchors. I hope you're finding your way through the challenges of this strange pandemic and all of its ripple effects. Please remember, you are loved by God and by one another. And nurture your resilience through remembering to remember. God bless you.